Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all on our next Facebook Live.
We are. It's
How
Friday. We're going to do some Seesaw.
It's all of Mindy's favorite things.
All of it. Friday first. Seesaw second. That's right.
Oh, well, we're so glad to be here again.
Yeah, I'm Corey Rogers. I'm going to be manning the chat. So we'd love to hear your questions and hear about your experiences with Seesaw in the chat today.
And I'm Beth Swans, and I'm along for the ride. So I'm looking forward to hearing from former Seesaw ambassador and now raised to a higher position.
Well, let's not get carried away. I do have to, as a disclaimer, say that I am a Seesaw certified educator, I believe is the new label that's been given. Just so you know what that means, it means that I get a free Seesaw Plus account, which works really nice because we have lots of schools who are using Seesaw for Schools. So then I can show those paid features as well. So I do have to say that as a disclaimer so I don't get sued by someone. So that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about Seesaw today. And we in our AEA have lots of Seesaw users. And so we're going to kind of dive into Seesaw activities today and how to create your own new Seesaw activity. And talking a little bit, as you may have been watching through the last 2 weeks, we, as our team, have created this continuous learning plan with different phases of continuous learning. And so we felt like Seesaw really hits kind of on the phase one, which is a home base for students to connect with their teachers and also teachers to connect with parents. And also phase two, because it's really starting to build some capacity for some student learning and allows teachers to put content out there for their students, either as a review and practice or even, some new ideas. So that's why we feel like Seesaw is important. It does hit some of those other phases too, but the Seesaw activities that we're talking about today kind of hit those first two phases.
So Mindy, I'm going to ask you a question right at the beginning, which is, it seems to me like normally when we hear Seesaw, it's in the lower grades. Is it really only a lower grade tool, or do you see it applying the whole gamut?
Yeah, so I think Seesaw, when it probably first came out, I think was a K-12 tool for sure, but elementary teachers really took it on as their own. But it really is super powerful, I think, and can be a K-12 tool. And the reason that I think, especially in these kind of crazy times that we're in right now, what's great about Seesaw, it has so many built-in creation tools in it. So, if you're using a Chromebook or something like that, we have lots of people asking, well, how do I take video, or how do I do this? Well, Seesaw has all of those tools built straight into the platform, so you don't need a bunch of other, things. If you want something extravagant, you are going to have to maybe find a third-party tool, as you would with anything. But that's what I think is really great about Seesaw, and can be a K-12 tool, because it really allows students to demonstrate their learning with choice, because they can choose how they share with those built-in tools. But I really think video is super powerful and maybe isn't used as much as we'd like to, and that's good for all students.
It always makes me think of, anything to do with music or something where you need to use voice, foreign language, anything that has those vocabulary and a need to videotape built right in. It's just all there.
Yeah, it really is. And, we've had journalism students use it too, because they put things in, with video and things like that to kind of get feedback from one another. So it really is, I think the name and the look of it sometimes comes across as elementary, which is a little bit unfortunate. But yeah, even if you're, a high school teacher, I think it's definitely a tool worth looking at.
Thank you.
You betcha. So a little bit about Seesaw activities if you're new to it. We're not going to talk too much about getting started. I believe Corey at some point in time will drop in a link of some getting started resources. So this is really about using Seesaw activities. And if you've already used maybe the activity library, this is really about how to get you started on creating your own activities and making them a little bit more powerful. So, you guys ready?
Can't wait.
Yes. If you are watching right now, I cannot pretend to be the expert in the room about Seesaw anymore. It has been put out there at one point in time. I felt like I really knew my stuff, but you teachers and practitioners are really the experts and know the, you know, the little nuances of using it with your students. So please, please, please tell us about how you're using it, great things that you're doing, even share some cool Seesaw activities if you've done that, and add that in the comments, because that will really build our community here too. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, give me a sec. Okay, I'm gonna move it down here just a smidge to get some of this stuff out of the way and move you guys to the other side here. Okay, so here we go. I am already in my Seesaw class, as you can see, and there's a couple different ways that I can get into creating a new activity myself. I can either just go into the Browse Activity Library, or I can hit this big green add sign, which is what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna click that, maybe I am. There we go. And I'm gonna click Assign Activity, which is gonna take me straight into my library. So this is an important aspect. Along the top there, it says Community, School, and My Library. This, in My Library, is where you're gonna find this Create New Activity. And I'm gonna click on that. So in the activity library, you're seeing all of these great things that teachers are making, and I definitely think you should get in there and don't recreate the wheel. If you see something that someone else has created, the great thing about that activity library is that they give you the freedom to take and tweak and edit. So that's one of the great perks of it. I would never suggest that you recreate the wheel. However, in this crazy time we're living in, we are using these activities in a different way. Seesaw was not originally meant for remote emergency learning. This is a new way to use this tool. And so I feel like with those activities, it's important for our students to see us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can use those activities to make it a little bit more powerful. I'm going to start just by naming it here. So first things first, my instructions go here, but I'm going to actually scoot down here to add a template for student responses. And I hear this from teachers all of the time. They're like, well, how are people making these templates that I see in activity libraries? Now, when I make them, I use Google Slides. I also steal them, and that's okay, because we have school districts that have made these huge slide decks for their teachers, and they put them out into the world for us to share. So Corey, there is a link for the Seesaw Activity Library folder, and I've kind of started putting some of these into a folder that I found over the years. So I have that tab open right now, and I'm going to go into this slide deck. This one is just called Seesaw Activity Library in that folder that Corey is going to share. And I'm just going to choose one that I really like, and I'm going to screenshot it. I'm just going to highlight that one that I want. I'm going to screenshot it, and I'm going to add it in as an image into my activity. And I already have that done here. So once I click on Add Template, I'm actually going to upload it. Okay? A little sluggish here. Maybe I am. Maybe we're just going to pretend. Ooh, I wonder, oh, here we go. Corey in the way on my screen, so now I gotta move that again. Okay, so I believe I have this just called Seesaw Template. Okay, so I'm just choosing this right off my desktop. And once again, that green check mark, everything is good, so I'm gonna add that in there. All right, so I've added this, my own template in here. There's a couple things that you can do now that you may or may not know about. So one of the things that I've seen teachers do is use this little caption button down here, over here on the left-hand side, to add voice instructions straight onto the template. You have the option to add voice instructions anyway, but they're adding voice instructions right with this template. So when students go to use this template, those instructions are kind of built right in. That's personal preference. So you can do that if you'd like to. You could also, if you wanted to, this is another option that I'm still kind of messing with in my head, is if you have Seesaw for Schools, you have the option over here on the right-hand side is where this template is. I can duplicate this page and then use this page to teach with. So when students come in, they can watch me working like a little video and then go to the next page to work on their own, okay? Not everybody has Seesaw for Schools though, so I'm gonna give you another little workaround and one that I think I might like better, and that is using our Screencastify tool. We shared Screencastify 2 weeks, the beginning of last week? I don't know. Corey's gonna drop the resources in there. So one of the things about the Screencastify tool is that it allows me to record my screen. It also allows me to have a little video of myself like you would see in the Zoom. And so the kids can see my face, see my expression, see everything's okay. You know, Mrs. Carney's here. And they can see me working on the template as well. Then after I have saved that little screen recording, you can go in and kind of clean up anything that you've done, but you can use that then to teach, to model for your students, to do think alouds for your students, all while they're seeing your face, which I think is really important right now. That's just my personal feelings. So then I don't really need this guy here, but I'm gonna click the OK. So when I go in, I have my template, which my students will use. Then if I have this little video from Screencastify of me teaching, I'm gonna add it as multimedia instructions. And I'm going to upload that little video of myself. So with Screencastify, I can download that video as an MP4. You wanna make sure you download it as an MP4 and then upload that in. And so when I'm done, my students can see that video of me demonstrating how to use that template and then also have a clean template for themselves to use as well. What do you think about that? Maybe.
I think it's great.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah. So I have a question here, can I ask? One of the things that we talk about often is differentiating for different students. And so it made me think about if you can add voice instructions to a specific activity as a teacher, how easy is it then to add like an additional bit of information for a student or modify a little bit what you're providing for students through Seesaw?
Absolutely. So once I save this activity, I can go always and make a copy of it and edit it. So if I want to start with the backbone of this activity and then change my instructions or scaffold it more, I can always make a copy of my, my foundational activity and then edit it for students. I'm also going to show you how to send an activity to specific students so that you don't have to send it to all of your students. You might have an activity that really is more focused for 4 or 5 students in your class that need to demonstrate understanding in a different way. Okay, so I have one more thing I think here. What I would say is I did talk a little bit about just adding voice instructions straight on top here in the activity. You can do that right here. It's just a little voice recorder and you can add what you're saying. The other thing, and which I do think is important, there is one other trick that I have had people ask me about, and it's how to add visual instructions into Seesaw. So if you've used Seesaw activities before, you've seen teachers who are using these little icons to have a visual, and that's really great for all of our students, especially our pre-readers, our beginning readers. So the way that works is there's a link that I believe Corey will plan to share with you, which will take you to this image that shows all of the different icons that you can add into your visual instructions that will, and then and Corey's gonna love this, a little bit of code that you're going to write in there. Yay!
Oh,
code.
It makes me so happy.
Yeah. Okay. So if we continue, so then right next to that visual is colon, and then your keyword and another colon. And when I go into my instructions, so let's say I want this add response here, I'm going to go into my instructions and I'm gonna, I always like to do is 2 spaces before and 2 spaces after just to kind of not get the text too close to that visual. So this will be add response. Okay, so 2 spaces, I do my colon, add colon. And it's not gonna show up until I publish that activity. So it's gonna look like this now, but once I save the activity, it's gonna flip over to my visual instructions. Okay, I'm gonna show you what that looks like here. I think I am. I gotta move my Zoom people out of the way again. Goodness. Okay, so you can see my add response, that little text I put in here is colon, add colon. It shows up as a little visual. So I really like this a lot for students who need that to know, okay, when I click add response, this is my first step. Click add response as it adds that visual in. So now that I have my template all finished, then I can go in to assign it to my students, and I choose my class. But one thing that I've noticed lots of teachers sometimes miss is this over here, edit students and folders. You'll have skills if you have Seesaw for Schools or Seesaw Plus. Okay, when I click on that link, it has all my students selected. I want to deselect all of my students and then just choose the students I want this assignment to go to or activity to go to. I can also label it with a folder so that it's easier to find later, and then it takes the responsibility off the students to remember to do that. So I'm going to click on my folder and check it, and then one last little button here is assigned to one class. I could also assign it to a second class if I wanted to, depending on how many classes you have. Okay, so I click on assign to one class. And then when I go back to class, you can see my activity is here for students to respond. Once I get into my students start to respond, I can see my 3 responses here, and I can click on those, and then I can see what my students have done and if anyone is still working on it. And then I can view all of them at one time. Okay.
So, Mindy, we've had Heather Hansen in the chat shared a link.
Hi, Heather.
So you know Heather.
Heather.
So Heather shared a link to a slide deck of templates she's been using for for Shannon Elementary, and she's graciously said that we can share that link on when we post this on YouTube. We just want to let people know that it's there in the chat, and we'd love to have more people sharing in there. So are you using templates? Do you have ones you'd be willing to share? So we just love to see what you're doing in the chat, because we see people watching. So we'd love to hear in the chat what you're doing, or if you've got questions about what Mindy just showed you.
Right. So thank you, Heather, because Heather's done a lot of great stuff with her teachers. She's from Monticello. She's done a ton of work. So thanks for sharing that, Heather. We really appreciate it. Okay, so next tip, if we don't have anything else in the chat, is how to archive an activity. So this may or may not be something that you knew about, is that you can archive an activity and kind of take it out in a way to clean it up. So if I go to an activity, and it has to have been responded to, okay? So I'm gonna go to this one that has responses. And when I click on those 3 dots, I can archive that activity. Now, one thing that you should know is that if you have someone still in draft stage, or any students that have not gone to that activity, it is no longer accessible to them once you have archived it. The work that has been completed will still show up in the student journals, but that activity itself will kind of be put away. It's not deleted. It'll still show up here in your archived activities, and it'll also still be in your activity library. But especially since I've heard lots of teachers, we're sharing stuff all the time, it can get kind of clunky and messy if you don't clean that out. So maybe consider on Friday afternoons kind of archiving things that are complete, or you're done with, or were optional activities, you know, that you're like, oh, if the kids didn't get to it, that's okay, I'm not gonna worry about it. So that might be something that will kind of clean that up for students, for you, for parents, for everyone. All right, so I have one more bonus thing, and that is that I've seen lots of teachers asking too about how to add multiple links or providing more choice for their students inside activities. And so one of the tools that I love the mostest outside of Seesaw is Google Slides. Like, I really heart Google Slides. So I actually found this really great slide deck. It's about sharks, and it was from HyperDocs, the website from HyperDocs, and it was just an example that someone had shared. So if you want to take a Google slide deck and put it into Seesaw, so I'm going to show you just a couple things about this. So right now with Seesaw, you might not have to be able to have something this powerful with this many different links and images. So that's what's really great about Seesaw, or about this Google slide. So kids can choose different links they want to go to, things like that. So if you want to provide different learning opportunities or websites or videos or any of those things, that's what's so great about Google Slides, but we need to smash it into Seesaw to make it work. So a couple things you can do. This one is not mine, but it has been published to the web. And the way I know that is because it has this little earth up here under share. I think this is the easiest way to do this. There is another way, which I'll show you quickly. But just because it's published to the web doesn't mean anything's going, like, no one's probably ever going to find it. I know lots of people get a little nervous because I don't want to publish anything to the web. The chances of anyone ever finding this slide deck are probably, I don't know, 96% not going to happen, okay? So we share it because it opens it up so anyone can access it, anyone can view it. That's the important thing. It also puts it kind of into this full screen mode so you don't see all of the slides over to the side. It also works better in Seesaw. Something else you can do is in your URL up here, you can see in this slide deck, there is, or in this URL, there is the word edit. If you change that word edit and put share instead, you can share that URL into Seesaw. But you also have to change it so that anyone with the link can view this slide deck. So that's 2 steps, okay? We want to have this opened up so kids can see it. It either has to be with present up here or published to the web, okay? One other tip I'm going to tell you is that you have to be on the first slide when you take this URL. Did you know that each link or each slide has its own link? So if I am on this slide number 5 and copy the link, it's going to take kids to slide number 5 first. You don't want that to happen. So make sure you have slide number 1 highlighted. Then take your URL with present, or if you have it shared to the world, then you just take the whole URL, which is what I'm going to do. When I go into, and I'm just going to do this quick because it's going to look the same, I can put it into an activity as a link, or I can just add it in as a link now, which is what I'm going to do just for the sake of time. Okay. It's going to do this. This is your last step of trickiness. It's going to say go to add file, and it's going to highlight in blue. So you're going to want to click on it. You are going to want to click on it. Don't click on it. Click on continue instead. It's going to think about it. Okay. So now when students go in to look at that, oh boy, and then you have all these extra steps because you're adding it in. Okay. When students go to look at it, when they go to click on this, it's going to go straight into their slides here. Okay, so they can click all the way through these and use them all, and it's not like a PDF or anything like that. All of these things are clickable. All of the links are clickable, and so students can have access to lots of different things at one time. How do you feel about that, Corey?
I think it's pretty amazing. We've had many Zooms this morning and been talking about for our own kids how having some choice and having some fun is really important to keep them engaged in this new online learning thing. And so I see both those things in there, that there's choice for kids. There's also some fun. What's Shark Week? Like, what isn't fun about Shark Week? I want to learn about that. And I think that's an important piece for teachers to remember too right now is let's, have a draw for kids to really want to engage in the content.
Yeah, and the neat thing about this is kind of like we showed with activities, you can add this as a multimedia instruction and still ask for a response from your students. Or maybe this is just something you put out there and you make some suggestion to kids like, hey, draw a shark and show it to your caretaker. Or it doesn't have to all be digital, but this can be kind of a starting spot for kids to kind of go off screen for a little while too. But yeah, you can add this link as a multimedia instruction and then also have a response as a template or something like that. So you can kind of do a couple of those things all at one time.
Oh, we got some questions. Woot,
Okay.
woot, thank you. So Shannon asked, can they write on these in Seesaw?
They cannot write on a live link like this in Seesaw. I do believe, and maybe like Heather would be a good person to answer this. So Heather, if you're still out there, I know that you can import those Google Slides into your templates, I believe, and make them editable, but I'm not sure how to do that. So maybe someone that's watching would be able to tell you a little bit about that, but I do know it's passable somehow. I feel like that was a newer trick in the last probably 3 or 4 months.
Got it. And so then HRH JD Yoder is asking, why not the blue option when you get that dialog box?
Oh, so when it does that, that's when it does make it like a PDF. And so if you continue through, it keeps it in the slides. So it'll know that that's a Google Doc link and will want to change the format of it. So just keep it as continue and let it be usable as a link instead.
Got it. And then that same person asked, if you publish to the web, do the slides show, do the slides on the side show up?
They shouldn't. The only reason I think, let me try it again like this. I'm going to go into an incognito window instead, which is what your students would probably be using. Oh yeah, it is still doing that. Why would that be? I thought when it published to the web, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, it's not supposed to. So I kind of wondered the same thing. I wondered the same thing.
It should. I wonder if that's in the settings when you go to add it to, I would need to find a slide deck. I think it's, this is what I'm guessing is that possibly it's when you go through to actually publish it to the web that is there something that says something like that? I don't know. You know what? After
we'll have to look.
Yes, I will make a little, because we do that all the time when we are doing presentations. We just share that presented link. So I'll create a little something and put it in the comments and respond there. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Thank
you.
Robin, our friend Robin Davis.
Hi,
Robin. Is saying, she said this is great. She's excited to share this with her teachers who do use Seesaw.
Oh, good.
Because she hasn't used it herself. But,
oh, good. Okay.
That's awesome.
So a couple things to know too, and I think I'm not sure that I hit these, is that there is, Corey, do you want to share the link in there to the Seesaw choice board templates? Yep. And they're not Seesaw specific, but they are choice board templates that you could use with Google Slides, which might be helpful to people who are maybe just getting started. Yeah. There is also, and I'm not sure I put this in those links, Corey, for you to share, but it is in the one pager. There is a Seesaw activity library presentation that I have that shows you how to actually create templates in Google Slides yourself too.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw in the link to our one pager again, because then you can find all that there.
Yeah.
Shannon did ask, do teachers use both Classroom and Seesaw or one or the other?
Well, Shannon, that's a good question. This is what I would say. I feel like both of them can be used in tandem, and I feel like they would then serve different purposes. So if you are using Google Classroom, that would become more of your Turnitin classroom assignment system. If you're using Seesaw alongside of that, that becomes your portfolio for students to share work that they want to put in there. So become a talking piece or something for conferences or something like that. I just feel like then you just have to be clear about what you're going to use Google Classroom for and what you're going to use Seesaw for. But there are lots of teachers that use both. Yeah. If you are in remote emergency learning, if I were you, I would choose one and keep it clean.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, especially as a parent.
Yeah.
I think right now sticking with one is a really good idea. But I think as we look ahead to returning to school when that happens, maybe exploring both, but being consistent and clear, I think is really good advice.
And I would also add that maybe sticking with whatever you were using before. This is
Right.
probably not the time to switch platforms just because there's a lot else going on.
I would agree 100%.
And so our friend Heather, man, she's got to be one of our, what are they? They're the top fans.
Yes.
To be a top fan. Heather said she has pre-K2 using Seesaw only, and 3rd and 4th grade using Google Classroom and Seesaw together right now.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know one of the other things that we had talked about early is all the videos and how-tos and resources that are available out there. I mean, like, I feel like Seesaw is one of those open sharing sort of platforms that there's lots of really amazing stuff available.
Absolutely. They have a really solid professional development system all their own. So their YouTube channel is fantastic. They also have something called PD in your PJ, so you can sign up for different webinars. So that's definitely something to look into. Their help and resource area on their website is phenomenal. So yeah, it really is. I think you can go in and type a question you have, and it's searched within the help is fantastic.
One of the things that I specifically was looking at with the PJ and the pajama, PD and the pajamas, I can't even say it, was how much, I was amazed at how many resources there are for high school, middle school. Yep. And examples of, here's a teacher that's using it in their math class so students can write out what their math problem is. It's a way to keep all of that. So there's, like, if you are a secondary teacher, there's so many ways that you can use this that are really very helpful, user-friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to tell my middle schoolers, like, you've got to make your thinking visible. Like, I can't pull it out of your brain. And so Seesaw, I think, is a wonderful way to help kids make their thinking visible. And then as a teacher, you can just in time kind of fill in those gaps and go like, wait, hold on, back up. You can see their process and kind of help guide them along the way.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies, we don't have any more questions.
All right. Hey.
Yeah. So happy Friday. This is the end of our second week, I think, of Facebook Lives. And so we're coming back at you on Monday. And we're going to kick off next week talking about our team's continuous learning guide. So we put together this guide. All these resources are with 4 phases. So you're going to join the 3 of us again with our colleague Amber, and we're going to kind of give an overview of those phases. Since we keep referencing it, we thought it might be nice to speak directly about it. So it'll be more conversation than tutorial, and we would love for you to join us to share, like, how is this transition to emergency remote learning, online learning, whatever you want to call it, going, and have you be part of that conversation. And then the last thing I'll do, lots of thank yous in there, so you're all welcome. The last thing we'll do is throw in links to our team's website where you can access all these resources, the continuous learning plan, and then the last thing that we'll do is throw in the schedule for these online outreach. So when our Facebook Lives are and what the topics will be for next week. We did have one last minute question. Hold on, ladies. So Tammy's asking, Tammy is asking, do the templates go with the core board for AAC?
No.
Okay.
With a big question mark, no.
Maybe, we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know for certain. I will, that's a great question for Maggie. Maybe I'll touch base with her and see what she says.
That would be great.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Take a break.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.